All right, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jed Locquiao. I'm over at Curriculum and Instruction in the School of Ed. I'd like to share with you one way of thinking about using ChatGPT in one particular context, in this instance with teacher candidates. Before we proceed, though, I'd like to ask if everyone could please open ChatGPT on their side with your laptops, if you have it, or with your phones. It'll be fun for us. It'll be helpful, I think, for us to get some practice in with some instructional moves related to ChatGPT as well. I'd like to think of this as a conversation. If you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt whenever. And if you have any connections, please make those connections whenever too, okay? Think of this as a conversation. It goes without saying, I hope you've all been enjoying the sunshine too. And real glad that you're sharing a little bit of that sunshine here in this capacity. But before we proceed, and for folks over Zoom, that goes the same way too. If you have questions, please say so. I'll do my best attending to the chat. But yeah, let's talk about one way of using ChatGPT in one very specific context. So our agenda here is we have some guiding questions. We'll do a little bit of a review of ChatGPT, just basic contours of it. And we'll talk about the context of this particular application, at least from my silo. And we'll do some instructional moves here, how I've used it in my classes. And last but not least, we'll do some practice with our own courses too, because hopefully you can take this and start envisioning how you can apply these with your students. All right, so let's start with the first thing here. With a piece of paper, with your laptops, with a Word doc, or a cuneiform tablet if you have it. What do you know about ChatGPT? You've already done about a morning's worth of PD, but what do you know? So somewhere in, if you have a box here in your top left, what do you know about ChatGPT and what questions do you still have? I would hazard a guess that despite having an entire morning, there's still some wrinkles to your practice about and to how you're going to use it. And let's take about 15 seconds for that. And I appreciate folks taking out their legal pads and writing. And again, the ask is this: what do we know about ChatGPT or the entire suite of generative AI like it?
Hey, Jed, this is Carol. Can you share your screen with us so we can see it?
Oh, hey, Carol. That's a great question. Let's see if I can do that here.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's a fair question. Let's see here. Yeah, let's do that. Can you see that all right, Carol?
Yep, that's perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for advocating. And let's take 5 more seconds here. Wrap up your last thought. Okay, how about this? Open forum, what do you all know? What do you all know about ChatGPT or other platforms like it?
Large language model.
Large language models. Ooh, sounds accurate. And thank you,
Tim.
Tim. Okay, what else do we know? And it could be a question too. What questions might you have as well?
I haven't used it very much at all, so I'm here to kind
That's fair.
of see how you're using.
Hey, that's fair. Okay, you're not alone.
It hallucinates some. There are some, things that are wrong.
Okay, as much as it is a large language model, and as much as it uses language, it can also use inaccurate language too. So thank you again, Tim. Here's the deal, folks. Whatever questions you might have, please hold on to them, and hopefully we can address them in turn. And whatever you do know right now, we can add to it too. Add just a little bit more than 0 today. But let's proceed here. A little bit of a refresher of what we know about ChatGPT. It and the entire family, the suite of generative AI, can be considered on these 4 major dimensions. The first one, like what Tim brought up here, is it's a platform that leans into natural language pattern recognition and pattern generation. And you might be wondering, yada, 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 why do we care? We care because it will influence how we interact with it and how we use it in our practice. It is based on natural language, okay? It tries to get a giant corpus of data as much as possible, and it tries to mimic it and use it statistically. Oh, okay, if a person's asking this set of questions, more likely than not, it's gonna be asking for this. So it's predictive. That's the main takeaway for us as educators. The second item here is it's multimodal now. We tend to use it in terms of its text output. I ask a question, it gives me an answer in text. It also produces robust images as well. If you ever get the chance to type in, draw me an XYZ, it will respond back with an XYZ. Again, using that natural language to predict what you're actually trying to look for, okay? The next item here is it has, and it's mimicking short-term working memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. And what does that mean? It saves its conversations with you, and it predicts what you're going to ask next based on your prior conversations. Again, while we're going through these notes, think about your students, think about how you're interacting with it. Okay, it seems to be mimicking this thing that we can think of as an all-purpose generalist entry-level assistant. For me, that was a major aha point thinking about ChatGPT, that here we have a very powerful, robust, attentive personal assistant. Okay, so maybe that's our first way that we can approach our relationship with ChatGPT, and not just us as instructors, but our students, that here we have a very powerful, robust, attentive personal assistant. So with our review in mind of ChatGPT and other Gen AI like it, the implication is this: it's non-exhaustive. You may have picked this up already in your initial review for the past 6 hours, that everyone under the sun has their hand in the pie. They're telling you to do this with ChatGPT, consider this, or watch out for this, da 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 da. It can be overwhelming, extremely overwhelming. How can we proceed, right? It's hard to keep up. One way of thinking about it that I'd like to pitch your way is this: that maybe then to remind ourselves about its function, its underlying function. As much as the car has so many parts, there's so many things we can remember about a car, so many pieces to it. Oh, you should be wary of this, da 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 da. We can think of ChatGPT's function is to be conversed with so that we can think. This idea that if we have that underlying relationship, everything else is just white noise. Think of ChatGPT as a conversational partner to help you think, okay? If we can model that sort of relationship with our students, they can probably have a more thoughtful, careful relationship with it as well, okay? How much of this is making sense so far, folks? Okay, and please say so if it doesn't. So with that in mind, what's the context here of the class I'm teaching? Again, I'm in special education, and one of our classes is secondary special education methods. A big thrust of that class is to prepare our teacher candidates to support students with disabilities as they think about next steps after we say goodbye to them. In this instance, one of our major units is transition planning, specifically around finding a job after they graduate. Okay, now you might be wondering, why care? Well, here's the deal. You might appreciate this on an intuitive level, but folks with disabilities, after they graduate, they have double the unemployment rates of typically developing folks. And more often than not, when they do have work, it's often menial and it doesn't match their skills, and more importantly, their ambitions. Okay, we're talking about work that is unfulfilling, that is not well-paying, and more often than not, it's not even accessible to begin with. So that's the context of our review here. Now, I won't belabor that, but intuitively and empirically, folks with disabilities are not getting the work that they should be getting. Okay. So having said that, there's a whole lot of different models of how we can think about preparing our students to find meaningful work. And one of these models here thinks of it in terms of 5 parts. For this particular class, we focused on job career exploration. And the question was, how can we use ChatGPT to help our teacher candidates use it thoughtfully to support students with disabilities as they're exploring jobs? That's the context of our review today, okay? So with this in mind, let's do some practice. And I want you to, as we're reviewing this, to consider yourself as both a teacher candidate and moving into the space of being a student. Okay, a student with a disability, without a disability, just a student who's trying to figure out what's good for them after they graduate, okay? So here's my question for you. I apologize for the small font, but I wanted to attend to the other bigger bullet points for our notes. But in your notes, with your piece of paper or in your headspace, my ask for you is this: when you are trying, the first part of figuring out what's a good job is the terms, the basic terms. So with the Venn diagram, how would you define career, jobs, vocations, hobbies, and chores? So let's take about a minute here. How would you define a career versus a job versus a vocation versus a chore? Now let's take a minute here, either in your notes on your piece of paper, on your computer, or in your headspace, how would you distinguish these four concepts? We take it for granted as adults, but how about our students? Okay, wrap up your last thought. So imagine that you're working with a teacher candidate and they've got a small group of students with disabilities here. And one of their first exercises is being able to name the very terms of having a position, right? We can think of ChatGPT here in this way. Now, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just getting a little excited here and I'm probably caffeinated, but with ChatGPT, if you have it pulled open, okay, whatever you wrote down, let's compare it against what ChatGPT says. And let me unfurl this here. Let's see. Ooh, I'm afraid if I click something, it's gonna end everything. It's not giving me, oh, okay. Let's see here. Excuse me, I should have prepared this. Perfect, let's do that. So unfurling this, or unhighlighting this. With ChatGPT, I'd like to ask you all this. Now let me make this a little bigger for our notes. So compare and contrast what you wrote with ChatGPT here. Take 3 of these prompts. What is the difference between a career versus a job? What is the difference between a career versus a hobby? I hate working. Why should I care about having a career? A classic question, a common question that we get, okay, from our students. How long can a person go without having a career? Why do people work? Does anyone like to work? So give that a shot. Take one of those questions, plug it into ChatGPT, and compare your answer, contrast your answer with what you were thinking, with what you wrote down, okay? The first instructional move with ChatGPT, as you're thinking about this, is brainstorming. Okay. One way to consider ChatGPT in a right size, thoughtful relationship is as a brainstorming tool, okay? Not to get ahead of myself. And give me a thumbs up when you've plugged it into ChatGPT, one of those. Thank you for the thumbs up. Now here's the fun part. It is a piece of tech. Let's break it. I would encourage you here, ask it questions, ask it follow-up questions, stretch it, okay? What does that mean? What does it mean? Ask it to refine its answer for you, okay? Ask it to give examples and non-examples. Ask it to give you fringe cases, okay? And after you've done so, if you, as a solo, as a partner in your group, chat with each other. What do you notice? In what ways is ChatGPT's answer accurate? In what ways is it problematic? In what ways does it have glaring gaps? Okay. And again, feel free to chat with each other. What do you notice? Oh, chat with each other for a moment. Yeah. Again, they ask you this, what do you notice? Where are there gaps? How is it inaccurate? Where does it seem to have a strength in responding to your prompt? And again, put yourself in the position of a teacher candidate, okay? Where would a teacher candidate's touch come in here? Where would it refine some of the answers that it's giving to the student? I'm asking a lot of questions. And we're talking from the context of education here, but think to your disciplines. Think to your disciplines, okay? What would be an example of X in my discipline? Ah, okay. This is probably a little inaccurate. This is probably a gap, okay? If I'm in economics, give me an example, or statistics, give me an example of a bell curve. Why should I care about the bell curve? Ah, it might give inaccurate outputs as well, okay? The big ask here, folks, is what problems do you anticipate with using ChatGPT as a brainstorming tool? What problems do we anticipate?
My concern with brainstorming is that, like, the whole point of the brainstorming is to come up with something original, new, and novel, yet ChatGPT is drawing from, those things that already exist. So that's my concern about using it as brainstorming.
That's a fair point. If brainstorming is about creating something new, novel, what then is this but regurgitated stuff, right? And that's a fair take. I think in the context of our students, especially students with disabilities, they would not necessarily be at that same level. That knowledge is not there necessarily. So here we have an opportunity for another way of thinking about ChatGPT as a scaffold, as a powerful scaffold, just to kind of set the stage for all that thinking, that higher order thinking.
So maybe like leveling the playing field for those with less background knowledge.
Hey, I think that's a fair take. Let's extend this. Here we can think of background or brainstorming as leveling the playing field so that folks can access that particular task. Sure, I think that's reasonable. Yes.
And the second thing, to piggyback on Karen's comment, was it already exists, but it's not that the candidates might come up with that list that already exists, but once that list exists and they see it, then that might tie into how they can plug into the subtopics, the subroutines of that.
Hey, so Dave, you're hitting up this idea of a person can look to a model, that this is a model. And if I follow this model, I can take this model, eventually make it my own, and then maybe I can come up with original stuff too. So that's a fair take too. Thank you, Dave, and thank you, Karen. Okay. What other?
Also good for international students,
Ooh.
who are not international students, who are not, necessarily on the same level with our, local students. With the, reference points or, background information about culture, history. So, it's a good, useful tool in that sense as well.
Thank you,
Abru,
Abru. Thank you for making that connection as well. For a lot of our students who are coming with different pockets of background knowledge, this too also helps them, helps shore up, helps level that field too. So thank you, and thank you.
I found that international students or English language learning students, like my references were to American culture and I had to broaden them to incorporate or ask, what's the equivalent of this in your culture?
Exactly. You'll be surprised by how much they don't know.
And it makes sense. I don't know.
It does.
If I went there, I wouldn't know. Like,
It does,
what
yeah.
are the childhood TV shows you watch? I don't know.
Exactly,
You
yeah,
can't reference Tom and Jerry and have it make sense,
absolutely.
So I think we can take this thinking to our discussion points here, and thank you for sticking with it. If we are thinking about ChatGPT as an instructional move, the first thing we can do is as a brainstorming tool to help equalize the playing field, as a scaffold, as a model, okay? As a way to shore up any gaps, okay? The second instructional move with ChatGPT is this, in the context of this particular class is, all right, our students are figuring out what the basic operating terms of a job are. Now, the second question is, what would make for a good job? How do we support our teacher candidates in helping the students figure out what makes for a good job? Okay. Well, what do you think makes for a good job? If you were an assembly person in a factory and they're producing this potion, right? This potion of the perfect job, what would you expect to see, right? Sugar, spice, contribution, an equal contribution in your 401k, right? But the question is this, what would make for a good job? So in your headspace with your notes, with your Word doc here, what would make for a good job? Just write down 3 items for me. Okay. As we're thinking about it too, we can use ChatGPT here to help support our students make sense of that question as well. And here's some example prompts that I'd encourage you to plug in. Shoot for 2 of these into ChatGPT, okay? What are good careers and jobs for me? What are bad careers and jobs for me? How do I know what I'm good at? What do I know? How would I know? If I value traveling a lot, what would be good jobs for me? What are easy jobs that do not require a lot of time to do? If I do not like scheduling or being front-facing, what would be good jobs for me? What books should I read? Videos, da 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 da. The second instructional move, if we think of ChatGPT's underlying function as conversation, we can think of ChatGPT as a coach. Okay, we can think of ChatGPT as a coach. So give this one a shot. Take 2 of these questions and plug it into ChatGPT. And feel free to add your own questions too. This is at the career exploration stage. What's a good job for me? What do I value? What do I want? And again, I know this is in the context of teacher candidates. Think to your students, how we can treat ChatGPT as a brainstorming tool, as a coach. Okay. And feel free to start chatting with each other whenever, okay? Again, what do you notice? What would be some barriers? What would be some opportunities here? And start thinking of how you can apply this with your own courses, okay? ChatGPT is a coach. I'm curious, Dave. Dave, what did you ask? I'm curious, if you feel comfortable sharing it.
Jobs that do not require a lot of time to do.
Okay.
Teaching online.
So here.
Hallucinating again.
And this one is freelance writing. Like, writing is a lot of work.
Yeah,
Like,
newspaper editor, sure. Okay, folks, in addition to these 2 answers, what opportunities, what barriers do you see? Where would we need an instructor's touch? Yeah, we have
For
ChatGPT as a coach.
clarification
For
of that.
clarification. Tell us more, please, Karen. What do you mean?
Freelance writing is not a little bit of work. Like,
So Karen's bringing up this idea that we need an instructor's touch for clarification, okay, to always be there. What else are we seeing? What else are we noticing?
I liked that it kind of noted when I was looking at different jobs, it did say kind of tips for finding the right fit. Easy doesn't mean unimportant, which I think is important too. I like
Ah,
that.
okay.
To let students know just because it's an easier job doesn't mean it's not important or it doesn't build soft skills or those sorts of things.
Jess, thank you for highlighting that. And put yourself in the position of a 16-year-old trying to think of next steps, right? How crucial, how wildly important and affirming it is to hear that, right? That just because it's easy doesn't mean it's not important, right?
And also easy to one person, maybe one thing, something that's easy to me may be harder for someone else or vice versa, right? So
Okay, validating, like a coach.
And it may be easy to you because you've got great interpersonal skills. And it may be not easy to someone else because they don't have those abilities.
Hey,
Or as strong as,
thank you for extending it.
Richard.
Thank you so much, Richard.
Sure.
Okay, folks, so here we have two instructional moves of ChatGPT so far. Brainstorming tool, a coach. Let's keep going here. If we think to the setup here of yeah, I was very caffeinated when I was preparing this. If we think more about this thing called career and job exploration, right? We can also help our students understand this. All right, let's say I want to be X or I want to be Y. I want to explore it a little bit deeper. How do I know? Here we can use ChatGPT, and this is wild. You can use ChatGPT to role play that particular position. So here's the ask, folks. In your with your ChatGPTs, choose a profession and ask it this. Pretend you are an X. Pretend you are Y. Okay. And after you've done so, ask it this list of questions here. Pretend in this instance, as an example, I want you to role play as a high school social studies teacher, ChatGPT. Immediately follow up with, can you tell me what your day looks like? Ooh. Or how about this? Why did you become a high school social studies teacher? Ooh, give it a shot. Choose a profession, ask ChatGPT to role play it, and grill it, interview it. We can think of ChatGPT as a role-playing tool as well. So think to your discipline. If you're a chemist, if you're in chemistry, pretend you're a chemist for me, ChatGPT. If you're in graphic design, pretend you're a graphic designer for me, ChatGPT. What does your day look like? Why did you get into this work? What seems to burn out a lot of people in this work? And I just want to say, I appreciate folks going on ChatGPT here and giving it a shot. And feel free to add your own questions too. As with the last time, what do you notice? What seems to be opportunities here and what seems to be problematic that requires an instructor's touch? All right, open forum, folks. What do you notice? What are opportunities? What are barriers, potential barriers here, wrinkles?
So I put in a grocery cashier and it gave day in the life and everything and why they became a grocery cashier. So the day in the life was kind of just clocking in, scanning groceries, etc. And then why they became a grocery cashier, they needed a steady job with flexible hours, right? I guess some of the things that I noticed was an instructor's touch, I guess, would be needed really with, it kind of acted like it devalued the role a little bit, the way that it talked about it, because it was an easier job and there wasn't much to it, I guess. So, and I also kind of wanted to acknowledge, you know, the burnout and like the workplace realities, because you had mentioned something along the lines of that. So kind of helping students map out kind of the career ladders that they can start from an entry level job and kind of move their way up in growth. And I guess that's more something that they would need from an instructor, and kind of that personal fit, I think.
Okay, and thank you so much for bringing that up, for spotlighting that, Jess. In one hand, ChatGPT can, we mentioned, we celebrated how it emphasized the good parts of work, right? That just because it's easy doesn't mean it's not necessarily important, but on the same hand, in the same breath, they can also kind of devalue certain work as well. Here we have an opportunity or the need for an instructor's touch. What else are we thinking, folks? What did you notice?
I'm frankly surprised at how accurate it is, to be honest.
Hey, tell us more, Karen. What are you noticing?
I did the prompt of pretend you're a high school teacher. What advice would you give to someone considering this career? And the titles are, it's more than a job, it's a calling. Patience is key. Embrace the variety. Know your subject, but teach life skills too. Work-life balance is a juggling act. Build relationships with students. You'll learn just as much as your students. Be prepared for challenges. Get support and build community. Be passionate and stay realistic.
Okay,
I mean, I didn't like read every single word, but those, as far as like bullets, make sense to me.
hey,
They're not very specific, they're pretty general, but if you're a person who doesn't know pretty much anything about it, it's a good starting place.
right, you're a 16-year-old, you're thinking, okay, would this be an okay fit for me? It's something, okay? And that after that something, that's where the instructor comes in, right? But actually, let's go with the last instructional move, and thank you, Karen, and thank you, Jess. Our last way of thinking about ChatGPT here is, well, let's say that you got a student, several students who want in. They're all in. I want to be X, Y, or Z. In this instance, I want to become a chef. How can we use ChatGPT methodically, thoughtfully in that way? We can think of it as a planner as well. Okay. Here we have a ChatGPT generated game of life game board here for us. But in this instance, we can have conversations with ChatGPT as a planner as well, as an event coordinator. And what does that mean? By asking questions like, all right, ChatGPT, I want you to pretend you're a job coach and you're going to motivate me to become a chef. If I am a sophomore in high school, what should I be thinking of as short-term goals? If I am a sophomore in high school, what should I be thinking of as long-term goals? What would my semester by semester look like? What would be good skills for me to practice? What should I do to stay motivated? What should I look out for? If things interrupt my plans. Okay, so give that a shot with your fields. Give that a shot. You can choose the chef here, but with ChatGPT, thinking to your discipline, I want you to be a graphic designer coach, ChatGPT. What should I start doing right now? If you're an economist, okay, I want to be an economist. What should I be studying right now? I want to be a baker. Who in the community should I seek out right now? We can think of ChatGPT here as a powerful accountability mechanism too, a planning and accountability mechanism. By this time, I should be here. By this date, I should be here. I should have done my certifications by the end of this month, okay? So give that a shot for a minute. Thinking to your disciplines. How can we use ChatGPT as a planner for our students? Okay, and chat with each other. What do you notice? What are some opportunities here? What are some barriers? What are some wrinkles that require an instructor's touch? They might see a smile.
It's funny when it remembers from what you asked before.
Right. That short-term memory. Yeah. Open forum folks, what are you noticing? What pitfalls, what potential are you envisioning here? Yes,
I say one of the things that I noticed is when I ask it a question, it gives me some answers. If I ask the same question again, it gives me another answer. And the two answers do not fully overlap, right? So at one point it says you should take these classes, for the second one it suggests another set of classes, right? But for the same job, right? I want to be a baker, what should I do? And then I get different
answers.
paths, yeah.
Thank you,
Wow.
Mohammed. Thank you, Mohammed. So you might have picked up that ChatGPT produces multiple answers, and often, sometimes it actually does response 1, response 2, right? And here's the deal. This is where the instructor comes in, right? It's speaking to generalities. Someone brought this up earlier that a lot of ChatGPT, the big threat to ChatGPT is this. It is presuming a general level of knowledge, entry level knowledge answer. That's it. ChatGPT cannot give you anything more than what a regular person down the street who has the slightest bit of interest in something would tell you. That was a major aha for me thinking about ChatGPT. If it is a personal assistant that will attend to your every question and answer at the very moment, like a personal assistant, it can only give you a very superficial, basic level of knowledge back. And that was a big aha for me, okay? We can think of it as a really, really thoughtful PA, a personal assistant. And that probably is a healthy way of having a relationship with ChatGPT at this juncture. It's a really robust Wikipedia. A Wikipedia that seems to have a conversation with us. All right. Thank you, Mohammed, as well. Last but not least, folks. So we have several instructional moves here with ChatGPT. Main takeaway 1, folks, we'll do a little bit of practice as well. Main takeaway is it's powerful. It's a very powerful brainstorming, reflection, planning, and accountability tool for job and career planning, but also for our specific subjects. It cuts across different domains. You can think about using ChatGPT as a brainstorming tool for economics. You can think about using ChatGPT as a coach for a student who's working on design. You can think of ChatGPT as a planner for a kiddo who's engaged in sports, all right? Sports management. The point is this, the more you converse with it, the more it should be able to support our thinking, broadly conceived. The second main takeaway here is, yeah, it's disruptive, and a lot of us are wringing our hands over it. It is powerful, but think to the calculator. It's a common conceit here, but the calculator was disruptive too. The ask for us as instructors is to have a right-sized relationship with it, because it will be here. It is ubiquitous. I remember listening to one of my colleagues chat about how if we don't use ChatGPT, we are doing a disservice to our students. We are inadvertently preparing them to fail. If everyone else is using it and we're not using it, we're setting them up to fail, okay? Right, but here's the fun part too. A lot of the questions that you've asked are questions that primarily revolve around the lower level of Bloom's taxonomy. We're talking recall, rehearsal, and maybe application. ChatGPT cannot, will not ever replace the other sorts of questions that we at the university are more concerned about. And that's stuff like, why should I? Is this good, right? To what end? The higher order questions of that triangle. So we have job security, end of story. For now. But yeah, let's end with a little bit of practice, folks, with by yourself or with a partner in your small groups here. Where can we think about using ChatGPT in any one of those moves as a coach, as a planner, as a brainstorming tool immediately, like tomorrow, if you have to teach with your courses. So let's give that a shot for about 2 minutes. All right, and yeah, thanks so much for your time. But let's do this practice here. 2 minutes. As a brainstorming tool, sure. As a coach, sure. And challenge yourself as a coach in assessment. How could we think about ChatGPT as a coach in assessment, as an assessment in our classes? How can we use ChatGPT as a brainstorming tool for assessment in our classes? Okay, easy to forget the assessment piece. As another example, let's say that you've assigned your students a big project with many different parts. How can we use ChatGPT as an accountability mechanism? Okay. Let's do 1 more minute here and we'll do an open forum, okay? Very curious to hear your takes, how you would apply ChatGPT in one of these 4 ways. Wrap up your last thought.
It's kind of, it's a.
Okay. How about this, folks? Open forums. One way you can use ChatGPT tomorrow for one of your classes. Okay, ambitious, a big ask, but what are we thinking? As a brainstorming tool, as a coach, as a planner, as an accountability mechanism. Probably should have given more time. Okay, one more time. What are we thinking?
didn't have anything solid.
Give it a shot.
Because
First draft thinking is good.
I'm repatterning for the 394 in the spring.
Mhm.
And, this has overlays in almost every section, so. I like how the first 5 questions, you had the prompts to work at. So I'm looking at my sections and what they need and what type of prompts they may have to start them off.
Okay. I'm glad it resonated for you, Dave.
What's that?
I'm glad it resonated for you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Dave. What else are we thinking, folks? And we'll do one more to round out our discussion today. Okay, again, first draft thinking, give it a shot. See if it sticks to the wall. Sometimes talking it out helps clarify it. It is a sort of brinkmanship as one teacher to other teachers to play the waiting game. But I think we can conclude here. Here's the deal, folks. Again, just main takeaways, having a right size relationship with ChatGPT. Not to run away from it. It's something that maybe we can have a little bit of fun and creativity with it, especially with respect to the lower level of cognitive tasks, remembering, rehearsing, recalling, just remembering, okay? The other item here is this, yeah, whatever, hopefully adding a little bit to your knowledge base today, an exit ticket just for yourself. We're not collecting this, but what do you now know? What are some points that you can hopefully take with you today? Otherwise, I'm wishing you all the best possible Saturday under the sun. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good one. Yeah. Thanks so much. Thank you everyone over Zoom. Cheers, Jess. Thank you again. Oh. Let's see.